Good evening. Welcome to the Design Review Board meeting of November 9th, 2023. The DRB meeting is now called to order. Please refrain from talking among yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current DRB agendas and staff reports are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division website. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeal is available from staff. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. Meetings are also archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. Roll call, Board Member Lakarev, absent. Board Member Kaskanian.
Present.
Board Member Welch.
Present.
Board Member Simonian.
Present.
And Chair Chagayan.
Present.
Thank you. Reports regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for the November 9th, 2023 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the city's website on November 2nd, 2023, and on the bulletin board outside City Hall on November 6th. Next item is approval of minutes from September 28th, 2023. Board members Lakarev and Chagayan were both absent, but could I have a motion for approval?
I'll move the minutes.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And then roll call vote. Board Member Kaskanian,
Yes.
Board Member Welch,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
and Chair Ryan. Oh, yes, you were absent. Sorry. Oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Design Review Board may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. Do you have any calls for oral communication?
No.
All right. Board member comments? Any?
No. No.
Okay, there's nothing on old business, so new business is going to be the first item. It's 5426 San Fernando Road, DRB case number 001980-2023. I'm going to turn it over to Eileen Babakani. She's the case planner, and there are several members of staff that also will have presentations.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and design review board members. The case before you is a design review case number PDR 001980-2023 for construction of a new approximately 6,318 square feet of building area for 10 soundstage production studios that will include 4 detached buildings. The site is approximately 424,453 square feet or 9.774 acres. It is irregular in shape, and it is the largest IMU zoned property in the city. IMU zone stands for Industrial Commercial Mixed Use Zone. The site contains of 2 parcels addressed as 5426 San Fernando Road and 753 West California Avenue. It is facing Milford Street to the north, California Avenue to the south, and San Fernando Road to the west. The site is surrounded primarily by industrial and commercial properties. There are also residential properties located to the east and southeast side of the site. The site has been reconstructed multiple times since its original development in 1929, and currently it is developed with the existing 10 buildings built between 1946 to 1989, with approximately 126,000 square feet in area. According to the applicant, the highest building on the site has an overall height of 33 feet. The current buildings and parking spaces are used for warehouse and entertainment productions. All buildings are proposed to be demolished. According to the historic assessments and the prepared environmental impact report for the project, none of the buildings currently on the project site is qualified as historic resource. Also, there is no indigenous protected trees on the site or within 20 feet of the site. Here are some photos of the existing buildings on the site, and full photographic survey was provided as an attachment to the staff report. The project is proposing parking areas, parking spaces, and 4 buildings which are labeled as Building 1 to 4. Building 1 is approximately 215,000 square feet. It is a 6-story building located towards the west side of the site with the primary frontage facing San Fernando Road. This is the campus main office with supporting spaces and also includes outdoor decks and balconies. Building 2, with approximately 97,900 square feet in area, will be a one-story production building to accommodate 5 sound stages and will be located toward the north side of the site facing Milford Street. Building 3, which is a 93,528 square feet in area, will also contain 5 production sound stages and will be located at the south of Building 2 behind Building 1. And Building 4 is a 6-story above-grade parking structure located at the northwest corner of the project site, facing San Fernando Road and Milford Street. The proposed parking structure will provide 479 parking spaces, and the project provides a total of 533 parking spaces, including surface parking spaces on the lot. And this project meets parking requirement according to the zoning code requirement. For the project, environmental review and environmental impact report, or EIR, was prepared, and the EIR consultant will provide a summary and overview of this study after staff presentation. The project also is pending approval for standards variance, setback variance, and parking exception. The approvals are pending EIR certification by this board. And for the board's information, a standard variance was requested for exceeding the height limit of 50 feet for Building 1 and Building 4. Also, a setback variance was requested for not providing the required entrance to parking structure or Building 4. And parking exception was requested to reduce the required landscaped area within parking area, and also to not provide landscape buffer at the east side of the parking structure, and also to plant trees along the perimeter of the parking area instead of separating trees inside the parking spaces. For the project site planning, staff believes that the project site planning is appropriate to the site and its primary industrial, commercial, and residential neighboring properties, and meets the city design guidelines for the suburban corridor projects. Since the guidelines encourage new construction to be located close to the streets, with surface parking areas to be located behind the buildings. Although the zoning code doesn't require street front setback or interior setback for the IMU zone properties, the project provides 17-foot setback along San Fernando Road, and also provides significant setbacks of approximately 49 feet to the east and 62 feet to the south, where abutting the residential properties. The project provides new driveway access from north and south side of the site on Milford Street and on California Avenue. This helps the traffic to be away from San Fernando Road frontage and also its intersection at Milford Street. Also, a U-shaped rideshare entry and pedestrian entry to Building 1 is designed along San Fernando Road. The location of the primary entrance to the project's office building along San Fernando Road is recessed to create visual interest. In terms of the existing sidewalks and street tree, the existing sidewalks and most of the street tree will remain unchanged, and the project also proposing some new street trees in compliance with the parking, Public Works Department and urban forestry requirements. The project landscaping is complementary to the building design and includes drought-tolerant plants and trees, which are proposed throughout the parking lots and along the site perimeter. Also, to enhance pedestrian experience along streets, landscaping is also provided along San Fernando Road and at the base of the buildings, and also a landscape open space with sitting area is designed for the public use at the northwest corner of this campus. The project rooftop mechanical equipment and trash collection area are appropriately screened from view. And moving forward, for the mass and the scale of the project, staff believes the project's mass and scale are appropriate and relate to the existing context and provide effective transition between existing industrial, commercial, and multi-story residential building adjacent to the project. As you notice, the taller portion of the proposed development is located away from the existing 1 to 2-story residential buildings as well. While the proposed buildings are larger than the existing buildings, the development will add to the visual interest and architectural elements that are appropriate and complement the existing commercial and industrial buildings along San Fernando Road. Also, as encouraged by the design guidelines, the proposed development is designed as a series of separate buildings with variations in building heights, steps back, materials, and colors. As was mentioned, the project is proposing 4 detached buildings. Building 1, which is a 6-story production office with supporting spaces, will be the tallest building with the overall height of 89 feet and 6 inches. This will be facing San Fernando Road. The building presents appropriate proportions with multiple forms, flat roof, step backs, terraces on the upper floor, and landscape along the lower levels of the building. This slide shows the elevation drawings of building number 1. And for the parking structure of building 4, the proposed landscape planter at the base of the parking structure help reduce the building's sense of mass. The 6-level above-ground parking structure will be located at the northwest corner of the site that was mentioned, with the overall height of 67 feet and 5 inches. Both building, if you notice, building 1 and 4 will exceed the height limit of 50 feet for this zone because of the site condition of having substantial excavation in the project sites in order to accommodate below-grade structure to stay within the maximum height limit is not physically feasible for this site due to residual environmental contamination in the surface soil that must not be disturbed. The EIR includes the details of this environmental condition, and variance case number PVAR 2201935 addresses the exceeded height limit. And And for the mass and scales of Building 2 and Building 3, which will have the overall height limit, height of 50 feet to the top of the building parapet, are largely unarticulated and designed to accommodate soundstage production spaces, and therefore they do not propose broken forms in order to meet the operational needs and industry standards of the soundstage production facilities. Building 2 will face Milford Street, and Building 3 will be partially visible from San Fernando Road and California Avenue to the south side of the site. I do have elevation drawing of Building 2 on the slide. And these are elevation drawings of Building 3. For the project's design and detailing, staff believes that the proposed modern architectural style and details are appropriate to the site and its surroundings. Overall, design and detailing reinforce the architectural style and enhance the edge of the suburban corridor along San Fernando Road. Building 1 will propose a smooth finish or EIFS in 2 colors, partial decorative metal cladding, metal railing and gates, metal canopies, glass surfaces, and aluminum doors and windows. A condition of approval is recommended to utilize higher quality material than EIFS and provide variety in material and colors, especially for the facade facing San Fernando Road. For Building 2 and 3, the project proposes painted CMU walls at the building base and tilt-top concrete panels above. The buildings do not feature any windows. For Building 4 parking structure, the concrete walls are partially clad with a metal panel cladding system to screen and soften the walls. I would like to mention that the project design indicates location of some signs, including accessory wall signs, directional signs, and accessory ground signs. The signs are appropriately scaled and sized for this building. Also, exterior light fixtures are proposed for Building 2 and 3, which appear to be appropriate to the building design. Also for the record, the project is subject to urban art requirements, and in order to comply with the requirements, the applicant agreed to pay an amount equivalent to 1% of the value of the project as determined by the building official, and that will be funded into the Urban Art Fund. Staff is requesting the board to certify the EIR and is recommending the approval of this project with one condition: to utilize higher quality materials than EIFS for Building 1 and provide variety in materials and color, especially for the facade facing San Fernando Road. Staff also received multiple public comments in email format for this project. All comments are provided for the board members for the consideration. Comments received in support of the project, 2 comments received with the concern of increase in traffic in the neighborhood, and comments also received in the position of the DRB being the review authority for this project. And this concludes my presentation. I think the next presentation will be our EIR consultant, Meridian Consultant.
Sorry, before we move on to you, it looks like
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Sawant.
Chair. Quick question for staff. You mentioned that one of the buildings had a CMU base with tilt-up above. Which building was that?
Building 2 and Building 3, the main sound stage production studios.
And so when I'm looking at the elevations that has the kind of gray base, is that the CMU? Is the gray?
This is what was mentioned on the drawing,
I
exactly.
see. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other comments? First, okay. Please state your name and
Good evening. I'm Tony Locacciato, a partner of Meridian Consultants. Our firm worked under contract with city staff to prepare this EIR. Apologies for all the reading material. Staff asked me to give you a brief overview of the process, the information, and the findings. This EIR was prepared over 15 months of work. Got the major steps on this slide for you. First, there was a preliminary review of the project application by city staff. After preliminary review, they determined there was a potential for significant environmental effects and preparation of an EIR was required. That was back in spring of last year. Then the first official step in the process, a notice of preparation of the EIR was prepared and circulated for the 30-day review period as required by CEQA in September 2022. And that was distributed to other public agencies and made available to the public on the city's website. Then we worked with staff for the next 7 months to prepare the draft EIR, including all the technical studies. After the draft EIR was completed, it was released for a 30-day review period in April and May. After that review period closed, all the comments, which are in the final EIR you reviewed, written responses were prepared to each comment. That took about 2 months. Go to the next slide. Quick overview, the draft EIR includes an introduction section, an executive summary, complete description of the project, and the environmental impact analysis for the topics that were studied, alternatives to the project, comparative evaluation of a set of alternatives I'll review, then effects not found to be significant, those topics that weren't studied in detail in the EIR and why. CEQA always requires that every EIR look at the potential for a project to induce additional growth, result in irreversible commitment of natural resources, that's looked at. And then there's reference sections. The appendices include the technical studies that were completed over that 7-month period. An air quality and greenhouse gas technical study. There were 2 separate historic resource reviews by 2 sets of historians. There's a phase 1 environmental site assessment that looked at the historical site contamination issues on the site, a noise study that looked at both construction and operation noise, transportation analysis, and then the last appendix includes the preliminary review initial study and that notice of preparation that was there. The draft EIR analyzed the potential for impacts related to 8 topics: aesthetics, change in visual character of the site and the area, air quality, again, construction and operation of the project, cultural resources, including historic resources, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, land use and planning, the consistency of this project with the applicable plans and policies, noise and vibration, and transportation. Summary, for 6 of the 8 topics, draft EIR determined their impacts would be less than significant. That included aesthetics, air quality, cultural resources, greenhouse gas emissions, land use and planning, and transportation. Wanted to spend a few minutes on historic resources because I know that'll be discussed this evening. And most of that will be about the building on the corner of Milford and San Fernando, an office showroom building. It's attached to an older warehouse building that goes further east on Milford. But the city completed a general survey of the area as part of the South Glendale Community Plan preparation. It identified that building on the corner as potentially eligible for listing on the Glendale Register of Historic Places because that survey determined that it was an excellent example of industrial development from the post-World War II period that represented continued growth of industry along San Fernando corridor. Now that preliminary review and that study identified the building as having a mid-century modern industrial architectural style and said there had been no major alterations made to that building. So the more detailed analysis prepared in the EIR document in the study found that the building permit history and the history of changes to that building wasn't complete in the original survey. some of the building permits referenced for other buildings on the site. There were other permits, so a more complete record was compiled that determined there were numerous modifications made to that building and the building it attached to over time. Over time, as Eileen mentioned, there's been a lot of buildings built on the site, a lot of them during the post-war period. The uses of those buildings has changed over time. And for that building on the corner, which was originally built as an office and showroom building, it's had a lot of modifications, both interior and exterior. As a result, there really aren't any of the remaining features of that building on the interior. It was originally built in 1946 for American Radiator and Standard Sanitary Corporation. It originally included offices, a display room with some large display windows, and had a small warehouse. Over time, additional tenants came in. The American Radiator Company was out in 1955. Another company, Product Research Company, moved into that building late 1950s, made another set of modifications. So as a result, that building just doesn't retain the integrity of its original facade or those display windows. It's been substantially altered over time. Window openings have been filled in. The front entrance has been changed. Other windows were installed that weren't consistent with the original design, and the exterior finish was altered with some stone veneer added. As a result of all that change over time, the determinations in the historic resource studies was the building doesn't now represent an outstanding example of industrial development along San Fernando Road. And that's the basis for that conclusion. Two of the topics looked at in the draft ER were determined to be less than significant with mitigation. First, hazards and hazardous materials. This site, due to the past industrial developments, the soil vapor, and groundwater were contaminated by the prior uses, and there's volatile organic compounds and hexavalent chromium in the soil and the groundwater. There was over 20 years of investigations and remediation activities, all under the direction and oversight of the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. After they finished remediating the site to a level that was safe for commercial and industrial use, a geosynthetic clay cap was placed over the western portion. It's about 6 feet under. And the purpose of that is, one, to keep any water from infiltrating through and further leaching the remaining contamination in the groundwater, and also keep those volatile organic compounds from migrating up into buildings. So that cap can't be disturbed. That's the regional board's condition of closure on the site. That's one reason why subterranean, putting the parking garage subterranean, or other features of the project won't work. So it's determined to be, again, cleaned up enough for commercial and industrial use, the existing use, and what's proposed. The mitigation measures identified are to install a vapor intrusion system in all the buildings. Even though that clay cap's there, there's still some potential for volatile organic compounds to come up. So capture that, vent it out through the buildings. And then the board also wanted a covenant recorded that would restrict the uses on the site to commercial or industrial uses, as it's not cleaned up to a level that would be suitable for residential use. The other topic that potential significant effects were found on were noise, and it was related to construction noise. We've got, apartment buildings right on the eastern border, other residential uses. California Avenue, we identified a series of construction management measures that can reduce the worst case noise identified by about 20 decibels. So the construction noise will not exceed the city's standards. And then at the draft ER identified then no unavoidable significant impacts. Eileen? As I mentioned, every EIR has to present information on a range of alternatives. The idea is to provide additional information on ways the potential significant effects of the project could be avoided entirely or substantially lessened. In this case, we've got temporary construction noise impacts and not disturbing that site contamination any further and developing the site in a consistent manner. The no project alternative is there because the CEQA guidelines require every ER look at no project. What happens if you don't do anything? In this case, the current use of the existing buildings would remain. So majority of them are used for entertainment studio use now. The other buildings are just used for storage because they're not suitable for other uses. Second alternative we have in there is since it's the IMU mixed-use zone, commercial uses are also allowed. So we have an alternative in there that looks at just commercial office. That has, greater traffic, more activity, and really doesn't avoid the potential impacts identified. The third alternative is a reduced intensity alternative that just puts the soundstage buildings on, doesn't have the production office space. So all the buildings would be 50 feet. That alternative would be environmentally superior, but it doesn't meet the objectives of the project entirely. The final EIR has an introduction in response to comments. Now, under CEQA, the primary purpose for circulating an EIR for review is to circulate it to other public agencies so the city can get comments from state agencies, county agencies, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, other agencies that have expertise. City received no comments from any public agencies on this draft EIR. 2 comment letters were received. One from a resident of Glendale with additional information about the history of the site and historic context of the building, and one from a private organization. That private organization commented on hazardous materials, made some technical comments in the energy analysis, questions about the existing buildings on the site, suggested the range of alternatives wasn't sufficient for the project, and had some technical questions about the population and housing analysis, which was in our effects found not to be significant section, and the potential for the project to induce additional growth. Detailed responses were provided to all those comments. The other comment letter provided additional information for the city to consider regarding the potential for the building on the corner to be historic. That additional information, part of it was that there was another company, Hollywood Water Heater Company, had a building on site in 1935, so maybe the historic significance period went back further than 1946, which was when that building was built for that American Radiator Company. Actually, through additional research, was determined that the Hollywood Water Heater Company had a smaller building in the center of the site that was built in the 30s, but it was demolished in 2009. So that information related to a building that's no longer on the site. Other information was provided and photos of buildings through additional research. Does get a little confusing because the addresses change over time on all those streets, the parcels changed, but historian staff went through it in detail and found a lot of that other information actually related to buildings across the street on the other side of San Fernando Road in the city of Los Angeles, not to this building, which again was built in 1946 for the American Radiator Company. And that's an overview of everything in your EIR this evening. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I had a quick question for either staff or Mr. Or the presenter. What's significant about, if permits go later than 1946 into the 30s? What was so significant about that fact that?
I think that would be the change of the significant era, the criteria.
Yeah, the pre-war versus the post-war era.
Thank you for
But
clarifying.
I'll be going over a couple of slides that might cover that a bit.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question too? A couple questions, actually. For the ground contamination, are there still active monitoring wells on the sites?
There are.
And how are those being incorporated into the building? Will those continue to be active monitoring sites, or?
Oh, they're gone? They've all been shut? Okay, the regional board did
Okay.
that monitoring.
And then the second question was about the alternatives considered. Because of this environmental or the historical resource, why was there not an alternative that would have potentially incorporated that into the project?
That's a great question, because under CEQA, EIRs have a range of alternatives that can avoid or substantially lessen the identified significant impacts. Because the building was determined not to be a historic resource, it's not an impact to demolish that building. Therefore, the EIR isn't required to have an alternative that looks avoiding impact that is not significant. So that was the reason for that.
Okay, so Jay Platt for staff. I wanted to, you've received a bunch of letters, and I'm sure we'll have some calls coming in and maybe some people in the audience talking about a couple of things. One is, why is the Design Review Board looking at an EIR that's talking about a historic resource? So I wanted to kind of guide you through the thinking of the Community Development Department and also our ordinances that bring us to the point that we are sure and confident that this is the appropriate path for this project to have taken. And then I also have a few slides that can put some visuals to some of the things Mr. Locasciato just discussed, and then also just kind of quickly go over, and I know this isn't your purview exactly, but why we believe that this property is not, or this building is not eligible for the Glendale Register and is therefore not a historic resource under CEQA. So first, I have a couple of wordy slides. I've highlighted some of the things that I wanted to hit. Title or Section 1522 of the Glendale Municipal Code is the demolition clearance section of the code. It talks about how we process projects that are proposing a demolition of any kind of building, whether it's historic or not. And it gives a lot of deference to the Director of Community Development, who it says shall review all demolition clearance applications, determine if the proposed demolition may have a substantial adverse impact on the environment under CEQA, determine the required level of environmental review under CEQA, and require preparation of any documents necessary to conduct this review, and upon review of those documents, determine the appropriate review authority. So as Tony just mentioned, this process was determined because we have a property identified in the South Glendale Historic Resource Survey as a potential historic resource. We said we need to do an EIR, and this is something the community now expects from us. And so we arranged for the EIR to be prepared. The EIR, as Mr. Locasciato said, there were two consultants involved in that, both who came to the same conclusion that it's not the building's not a historic resource. My review as the staff historic preservation person agrees with that determination. And then there was one letter that came in from Francesca Smith challenging the whether or not this is a historic resource. So I just wanted to mention that when we do surveys, the survey consultant determines levels of whether a property is or is not, or at what level is it a historic resource. In the survey, this building was identified as, wonky term, status code 5S3, which means it appears to be individually eligible for listing in the Glendale Register. Under CEQA, that's a threshold that means under CEQA, we must consider this as a discretionary, or what we call in our code, a potential historic resource. And that's why we did the EIR. But I think it's important to remember that this is a preliminary determination based on a windshield survey. There was some permit research that went in, but as was mentioned, that wasn't complete. We discovered, because of these changes of parcels and addresses and things, other permits, some of which pertain to this building, some of which pertain to other buildings on the site. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit just to quote the the CEQA regulations from the state, which say that unless a resource listed in a survey has been demolished, this has not, lost substantial integrity, we believe this has, or there is a preponderance of evidence indicating that it is otherwise not eligible for listing, we believe there is a preponderance of evidence that this building is not a historic resource based on the two consultant reports that are included in the EIR, as well as staff's review and concurrence with those reports. So if those things are true, if those things, if the building hasn't been demolished, maintains integrity, and there is evidence that it's historic, the lead agency should consider the resource to be potentially eligible for the California Register. We talk California here because this is the state CEQA guidelines, but we can substitute Glendale Register there. Going back to the authority under our code, once the director has made a determination, that this requires an EIR, and then reviews that documentation under subsection 3 and finds that there is a preponderance of information telling us that this is not a historic resource, we go to section A, the historic preservation shall be the review authority for these demolition clearances if The proposal under review is determined by the Director of Community Development to involve a potential historic resource. That is not the case because of this very thorough review that was done as part of the EIR. We have another section of 1522 that indicates when the DRB is a review authority for a project involving a demolition. And that basically, I'm not going to read this, but basically that means there has been a finding that no historic resource is involved with the project. And that's the case that we believe to be true, and the reason that we're bringing this to DRB instead of HPC. The report that was submitted by Francesca Smith contains a lot of errors, so much misinformation. It also spends a lot of time attacking the consultants on this project in what I don't know how to describe it except kind of a mercilessly uncongenial or uncollegiate way. And I just wanted to put some highlights in here because some of these disprove the argument that this is a historic resource. So as Mr. Locasciato mentioned, this report identifies the Hollywood water heater building as the property that we are considering tonight for demolition as part of this project. The Hollywood water heater building was not this building and never was this building. It was another building on the same very large site, but was never here. So I highlight on page 4 of this submittal, talking about both of the consultants. In addition, both miss the essential fact that the subject property is streamlined moderne, a style that was not popular or prevalent after World War II, suggesting that anything that's streamlined modernish after World War II would be less significant than something before the war. Of course, this building was built in 1946, 1947. It is after World War II, and this is just one of many pieces of information in this that is both incorrect and counteracts the argument that's attempted to be made. On page 5, she notes the differences between the dates that the consultants have said, 1946-47 for the building that's on the ground today, and 1935 for the other building that was mistaken for the building that's on the ground today. I highlight the sentence, that difference in dates is significant, which of course we agree with. It is significant because the report that we received is wrong. There is no substantial evidence that this pre-war streamlined modern building is significant because it never existed. On page 9, she mentions a photograph in figure 2, and also in this rather, the tone you can tell, photograph in figure 2, as well as a simple city directory research from the 1930s, proves the two consulting firms each wrong in dating, as well as evaluating the subject property for historic significance. Obviously, that attack on the quality and integrity of the reports itself is incorrect, and therefore calls into question the reasoning of much of this letter. In the same letter, photographs were submitted of the building on the top, which was presented as being the building that we're looking at today. And while it is a streamlined modern building, in fact, it's a very nice streamlined modern building, I think a casual look at this photograph tells us this is not the same building, both in terms of the area that you see at the top right, where there is an extended canopy, as we have on the existing building, supported by columns, different window pattern, different rear portion of the building. As soon as I saw this picture, I was like, we're talking about different buildings. Here's a close-up of the front section of the building that we're talking about tonight on San Fernando Road, and this building, which is on, what street is it on? I can't remember, Sperry, I think, but near what's called West San Fernando Road in the city of Los Angeles rather than Glendale. Here's that photo of the building in Los Angeles again. It still stands, and it's part of a complex. Nope, I don't have that photo, that image here. It's part of a complex of 4 streamlined modern buildings identified in Survey LA, the survey of Los Angeles historic properties, as significant at the state and local level for Los Angeles. Another piece of information that's missing from the report, and would have instantly identified the date of this building is a Sanborn fire insurance map, which is one of the basic sources of information when we do historic research. Highlighted in blue, you can see that this map from 1950 says that this building was built in 1946, fireproof construction, reinforced concrete. It also shows the layout of the spaces inside, including a display room that fronts onto San Fernando Road at the bottom of the image and wraps around the corner. And you see there's probably an entry area and I imagine a reception area at that point, offices running along Milford, and then a warehouse structure or warehouse portion of the building toward the interior of the lot. And this is important when we start thinking about the changes. I put this image just so you can see that we're not too far away from the building that was identified in the photograph and presented as part of the response to the EIR as the building that is under consideration tonight. But you can see it is across the railroad tracks on the other side of San Fernando Road and in the city of Los Angeles. Interestingly enough, if you take the image that was presented, the large image that I showed at the beginning, and you zoom in on it, and this is something that the consultants discovered all of this. The consultants did all of this research to find that it was in Los Angeles. But it is interesting when you see in between these two of these Streamline Moderne buildings, you actually see the Hollywood Water Heater Company. And you see that it's a very, very different building than the one that's being considered tonight. Moving on to Glendale Register criteria, the survey found that the building was eligible under Criterion 1, and I say potentially eligible, identified with important events in national, state, city history, not so much, or exemplifies significant contributions to the broad cultural, political, economic, social, tribal, or historic heritage of the city, and retains historic integrity. So we found that there's no evidence presented in the record at all, but no substantial evidence, certainly, that the American Radiator Company building or this building itself, built after World War II, is significant in the history of the development of San Fernando Road as an industrial corridor, as a commercial corridor, or that there's any integrity or there's enough integrity left for this building to tell its story, to tell us that it is significant under the Glendale Register criteria. There's another criterion for architecture, which is often used for Glendale Register designations. It was not chosen by the South Glendale Resource Survey consultant. So they just identified it under Criterion 1. But Mrs. Smith has identified it also under Criterion 3 for the quality of its architecture, finding that it embodies the distinctive and exemplary characteristics of an architectural style, Streamline Moderne. The report mentions on page 6, the few alterations to the existing building are minor. And I have to disagree strongly, and I'll finish my presentation just by showing a few images of the building so you can see why staff, I thought it was important, given the volume of letters that you've received, that you understand why we're doing this, why we took this path, and that we didn't take it lightly. It's something we give a lot of consideration to, and we, I think, do a very good job protecting historic resources, but part of that job is to also recognize when we are not looking at historic resources, and that's very important, just as important. Here, going back to that Sanborn map, I've highlighted the facade areas that are altered, rather dramatically altered, in red. That's the entire street frontage along San Fernando Road, the corner entrance area, and then a wrap up along Milford. And then in green, we have the area of the building that is still intact from its original construction, still resembles very closely its original appearance. So looking at the corner first, since this was the entrance, perhaps the most prominent area, we see the unbelievably cool, dramatic cantilevered canopy, very deep, extended cantilever on this canopy. It is what I believe swayed the decision-making when we were doing the survey, when staff was working with the survey team. It's a feature that it's hard to miss. It's a great feature. And because windshield surveys are by their nature not intensive, not focused, it's easy to get, to focus on something like this. But when we look at the entrance, obviously the entrance doors have changed. We don't know what they looked like originally. The area where you see the stacked stone, which is a very contemporary cladding material, we don't know what was there before. So what we have on this building is a great cantilevered canopy and a cool rounded corner that addresses the angle of the streets. And you see this carries forward along the wrap that you see on the top left. So that's the wrap along Milford Avenue, a window pattern that's at odds with the streamlined modern style, but we don't know what was there before. When we go to the other side of the entry along San Fernando Road, this was the area that was identified as the display room, the showroom for the American Radiator Company. Each of these 5 openings inside the reinforced concrete building were infilled with something. We're presuming they were infilled with some sort of display window because it was a showroom, and that's what you do when you've got a product that you want the public to see and understand. We have no idea what that infill looked like. Did it have streamlined modern features? Did it have horizontal banding through a transom or perhaps a base course or a bulkhead? How many divisions vertically did it have? Because certainly you couldn't have had a giant piece of glass that spanned, these are very wide openings, and there are 5 of them spanning the facade. On the top right, you also see the 2 of the openings were infilled with stucco, and the other 3 were infilled with brick, very crudely laid and very crude brick itself, not a finished face brick that you would usually see on a building. Clearly infill. The fact that they're infill is also proven by you can see the scars or the shadow lines of where the display framework, whatever the windows were, you can see the lines consistently in each opening showing where the framework ended as it came to the face of the building. This is the Milford side, which is intact. We believe that this is pretty much the original appearance. And I should note that the windows on this side of the building, which in the Francesca Smith letter are presumed to be original, these windows are different than these windows, which very much feel original. So they're different steel sash, which suggests that they were obviously installed at another time, as does the brick infill and the windows being placed on top of that brick infill. Last slide is the consultant team found this image in the Los Angeles Times, which is a rendering, not a photograph of the building, and it sure does look cool. Unfortunately, the only thing that's clear here is that there's a canopy, that there are steel sash windows on the left Milford side, very utilitarian side. Unfortunately, we can't make out any of the San Fernando facade because of the depth of the canopy. And at the front entrance, we can see a white framework suggesting that there were probably double doors set inside some sort of wall. But again, we don't know what that is. And when there's talk that we've heard, this building was identified as potentially eligible for the Glendale Register. If this were to be nominated to the Glendale Register in its current condition, and I was reviewing that, I would say, well, not only does it have a lot of changes, but what if we said, well, why don't we try to restore it back to what it was? And maybe it'll be significant then. But we don't know what it was. We can't tell what it was. There's no evidence for doing that kind of restorative work. Therefore, we would be making it up, which violates the Secretary of the Interior standards. So at every level, even though I'm the first to say that I was supportive of this being identified in the survey, and I admit that it was a superficial judgment on my part at least, based on the canopy, but everything that we've learned through this process from the consultant teams is that there is a substantial amount of evidence that it is not historic in the EIR, and we find that the letter that came in is not only insubstantial, but so in error and incorrect that it's surprising. And I'll just leave it at that. But that's why, I hope this explains why we think this is the proper venue for discussing this project.
Very helpful. Yes, thank you, Mr. Platt. Do we have any questions? I have one question. The South Glendale Historic Resource Survey consultant, is that somebody that the city of Glendale hires, and were they then invited to further look into this building like the other two consultants did, or it was
That we
just the high?
we didn't ask them to revisit this, no. But as part of any survey, once they begin fleshing out what they find to be significant and not, staff gets involved at that point. And I was part of the discussions with the consultants at that meeting. And I'll just be honest that they were less inclined to, to see this as significant than I might have been. And sometimes when something is right in the gray area, certain sites, obvious historic, certain sites obviously not historic. Some sites find this middle ground, and there's a point when you have to make a decision one way or the other.
Right.
And so the decision was made in the direction it was today, but it wasn't a clear-cut choice.
Right. Thank you. Okay. No further questions? No?
Madam Chair, as I had previously, Madam Chair, as I had previously noted to staff as well, as I have a hard stop this evening at 7, and so just wanted to put that out for the record. I should have mentioned it before we started, but I had mentioned it obviously to everyone, including staff. So I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't
Yes.
mention it earlier.
I know.
Thank
Thank you. All right, so if there are no further questions for staff, I think we can go ahead and open up the public forum and invite the applicant and owner, Shep Wainwright. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much, and good evening.
And sorry, before you start, can we set the rules, I guess, so everyone's aware, since we have a lot of speakers?
How much time do you want to give the applicant for the presentation? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes?
How much time do you think you need? 5,
The city
10?
staff has done a really wonderful
Right.
job of already presenting this, so I don't think, 10 minutes
10
less.
minutes,
I'm going to
okay.
take only 30 seconds. But,
Sure, okay. All right.
Yeah. Is
And
that okay?
then just so everyone is aware, I think Vista will be, when we get to the comment section, we'll limit the time on that as well. A sound will alarm, and that'll be your 30-second warning, I believe. And then when it hits the second time, we have to stop you. So please try to summarize briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Shep Wainwright. I'm a partner with East End Studios. We are the developer of this project, and I just wanted to say thank you to this group for being here tonight, and a special thank you to the staff for having worked so incredibly well with us over the last 2 years to get us to this point. I think sometimes it's hard to recognize how much work has gone in on both their part and ours to get to this moment in time, and so I hope it's not lost on you that this has been really 2 years of work going back and forth with everybody in staff to hopefully present what we consider to be an unbelievable project for Glendale. And so we are hugely excited about it. We feel that this is hopefully gets us on the precipice of actually taking these from actual plans and renderings and to put it into reality. And just so you know where we stand, we as developers are in the process of building a portfolio of roughly 3 million square feet of projects around the country, 4 here in Glendale and Los Angeles, and 1 in New York City. And this happens to be one of them. And we are just incredibly excited about what we can build here and what we can bring to the city of Glendale. This is going to represent hundreds of jobs in the city of Glendale, and what we consider to be, one of the most 21st century studio facilities, in Los Angeles, in Glendale, and we're actually just incredibly excited about it. So we hope that you are too, and happy to answer any questions that you might have about how we got to this moment in time. And I'm going to hand it over to our architectural team, Gensler, to just take you through, I guess, in a little bit more detail, what Eileen did such a good job of presenting to you tonight. But thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So from the architect, John Wiedner?
Yes.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm John Wiedner. I'm an architect at Gensler. We're the lead architect for the project. As I'll echo what Shep said, the staff has done an amazing job getting us to this point. So Eileen has already walked you through the project, but I'd be happy to answer any questions along the way. But again, I want to be able to kind of discuss maybe some of the design features, because I'm sure that's some of the questions you might have as well. So as Eileen noted, there's 4 buildings located on the site. Obviously, the primary building on San Fernando Boulevard is Building 1. We have the parking structure on the northwest corner, Building 2 with the sound stages, and Building 3 with the sound stages. And the team did spent a lot of time and effort making sure that it was adaptable for the current use, and forward thinking in terms of the needs for production campuses in the Southern California area. Building 1 in particular is a 6-story building, as noted, and you can see from the renderings. I think you can see the aerial rendering here. We have a strong base at the bottom, and it encloses what we call flex space. Flex space for studios is generic in terms of a catch-all space. They could have one day, they could have wardrobe, they could have hair and makeup, they could do crew feeds. It's really an adaptable space for productions to have some flexibility in terms of the use. There's also a small mill space located on the ground floor to be able to support mill needs for the production studio in particular. The ground floor is actually accented by a dark band, and again, the exterior material, as noted, and we would like to obviously address the concerns of staff, is EIFS, which is, as you know, is an exterior insulated finish system. The rest of the building is obviously has aluminum frame windows, which we have some samples of the colors here. The team spent a lot of time breaking up the mass of the building, especially along San Fernando. In fact, you'll notice the building has a large kind of gap in the middle, which we've set back with a little bit different glazing to accentuate the entry as well. The team spent a lot of time addressing, obviously, the street curb concern, which we've addressed by adding in a roundabout for vehicular drop-off, for Uber, for Lyft, et cetera, for deliveries. That's also a very secured entry. And just one thing to note, any studio campus in the Southern California region or anywhere else in the world is a highly secured campus. So security is paramount. So obviously the buildings do provide a secured boundary. The facades above are lighter material, same EIFS systems, aluminum glazing, lighter material in terms of colors, a little bit of ins and outs to provide some architectural features, which change during the day with the shadowing. We think it's a nice accent along the side, so the facade becomes very active throughout the entire day. The sound stages, just for clarification, there is both CMU and tilt-up. There is a portion that is CMU, but the primary facade on the sound stages is tilt-up. I know you'd asked the question previously, so I want to make sure we address that. And again, the bottom banding of that facade is also a very dark color. It's done for maintenance and everything else to provide kind of an accentuated piece across the site. And the upper portion is a lighter tone to match the Building 1. That goes for Building 2 and Building 3. Building 2 in particular has 5 sound stages. There's also a flex space, very similar to the flex space that's located in the ground floor of Building 1. And then Building 3 is 5 new sound stages as well. And Building 4 is obviously the parking structure, which sits on the corner. We did made an effort, especially on the parking structure in particular, to set back as far as possible to provide an extra landscape area on the corner, which we think is a real benefit for the neighborhood. So in particular, we want to make sure that we've addressed the color materials. I know some have taken a look. We're happy to answer questions now, but in particular, we want to be able to address the EIFS comment that came from staff. So we want to make sure we open the table for that if that's possible.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I have a few questions. The entranceway at the north there, it doesn't quite exactly line up with the street that feeds into it. Was there any attempt to try and align that so that the exit from the freeway, which is about a block north, people coming from I guess that would be the eastbound 134 would be exiting and coming straight down that street, and it just doesn't line up with the studio entrance. So it seemed a little off to me that it didn't exactly line up. Did you put any thought into trying to make it line up?
Are you referring to Gate A?
Yes.
Yeah. So we worked with the setbacks that were allowed, and then working with the size of the parking structure and the need for the project in terms of Building 1. That's really where the entrance ended up. And then we also backed in the fact that we're working from the east side of the property, making sure we have enough setback, especially to address the edge condition for parking and access and circulation and the size of the stages. So there was a scientific way to go about it, but at the end of the day, that's where it ended up.
Okay. I also feel that the turning radius from that entrance into the parking garage is extremely restricted. And since it's inbound on both lanes there, somebody coming in on the right side lane would have a really hard time getting into the parking structure from there, it seemed to me.
So we're talking about the entrance off Gate A,
Correct?
turning into the garage.
Correct.
So there's a fair amount of distance to be able to make that turn. We've had our traffic engineers also do turning radiuses, and it does work.
And where would the Star Wagons be parked on this campus?
So there's a variety of locations. We have setbacks in front of the stages. I'll note here on the plan, there's a small portion in Building 2 located here that has stage doors, and this is what we'll call base camp. Base camp is traditionally a name that's used in the industry to be able to put Star Wagons, production trucks, things you see on obviously in an active studio lot. There's locations along Building 2 in the courtyard here. And then along the north side of Building 3, there's a 15-foot wide zone here that is basically set aside for parking trucks up parallel to it. So the Star Wagons in particular would park there. We also have covered parking under Building 1. There's a small portion that has some covered base camp as well for additional parking.
And that would not intrude upon the fire lanes or anything?
No, it's outside the fire lane,
I'm sorry,
correct.
just real quick, we need you to stand closer to the microphone.
Sorry, I usually get told I talk too loud. Okay.
Okay. I had another question, but it just got driven out of my mind, so
We'll come back to it.
other questions from somebody else?
Other questions? Well, I guess my question would be how you felt about the condition that is being proposed by staff and how you might address it if we do move forward with that.
So we specified EVIS. We think it's actually a superior material for this particular project and application. It has a great quality of finish that's very similar to plaster. It's got great durability, great maintenance. It's easy to maintain. It also actually has a higher performance in terms of thermal performance than a traditional exterior system. So we think it's actually a great material for this particular application. The finish of the material, in some cases, is actually more superior than plaster, just given the light touch. We have some samples of what the finish would be. We don't have the actual color, and the paint samples that are shown down here. So we'd be happy to share those as well.
Thank you. Yes.
Came back. Are any of these stages rated to host audiences in them?
No, they're not.
None of them?
No,
Okay.
none of them.
So that's never intended to be a use for the site?
If it does happen, it's usually taken on by a particular production. They will actually go into the city and apply for a permit. Similar to most studios in the Southern California region, the studios typically are not designed for audience rated. They are designed for traditional production use. If an audience show is needed, they typically will go into either the building department or the fire department to pull a special permit.
And I noticed a lot of the loading zones are only about 21 feet. You know, maybe a couple of them are doubled up to 42 feet. But, I mean, I see big rig trucks coming on studio lots, you know, and that seems a little small to accommodate a big rig truck or multiple big rig trucks at the same time.
Right, so the big rigs are the rarity. It's typically we'll call the panel trucks are about 42 feet in length. That's typically or 32 feet, I'm sorry, in length. That's typically the day-to-day truck with the flatbeds that do the day-to-day deliveries. If there is a large delivery, productions will have what's called a transportation captain. They'll be able to work with other productions on the campus and with ownership to be able to manage any ingress and egress of larger trucks during that particular day. That's not the norm, that's more the rarity.
Okay.
Thank you. No further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you for your time.
And we'll move on to our next speaker, Josh Christensen.
Should we go to Francesca?
You want to do that?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, excuse me,
We
sorry.
have a caller on the line who has a presentation, so maybe we should do that first.
Do that first and then move on to the cards?
It's the caller who submitted one of the pieces of testimony for the EIR, so it seems it should probably come here.
Oh,
But it's your
okay.
discretion, so.
Sure, no, that's fine. Let's go ahead and move on to the caller. And let's set a time limit for the caller, please.
Okay, sure.
It'd be 10 minutes like the team had, or less?
This is one of the consultants. If we can do
Well,
5.
this is one of the respondents to the draft EIR.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yes.
What is the difference between a community member that's calling in versus someone that's responding to an EIR? Shouldn't it be 3 minutes?
Yeah, this is not one of the consultants. Sorry,
No.
maybe I misunderstood.
It's a community member, right? Calling in?
It is, yes.
So why should they have special privileges?
Because they have a presentation and because they submitted an extensive letter. You know, this is the board's call. We've seen this kind of thing happen before, so.
Let's cut it in the middle, 5 minutes, please.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Francesca Smith, you're on the air with the DRB. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks very much. I can't see the screen, so I can't see if my presentation is up. Could you let me know if the PowerPoint is there?
It is.
It is there.
Okay, I'll go as quickly as I can. Good evening. My name is Francesca Smith. I'm an architectural historian with more than 35 years of successful experience evaluating buildings for historic significance throughout California and the U.S., primarily for public agencies. The facts enumerated tonight by Mr. Platt are included in the final EIR, but a large amount of time was spent belaboring those issues to the Commission. I'm sorry he didn't address the comments in my October 25th letter to the DRB, unfortunately, especially because the Commission doesn't have any purview over historic properties. It was probably hard for all of you. That rendering that you were shown, as you know, is merely a rendering. An issue that came up was the senior partner emeritus from the firm who prepared the South Glendale survey was consulted by me on this issue, and she was flatly displeased that its findings are being overturned in this case, as well as some others by the same consultants. Next slide, please. If you can let me know when it's up, because I can't see it. Thanks.
Yep.
For this project, the main building was found eligible, as Jay explained, for listing in the California Register in a survey administered and overseen by the City of Glendale. Its eligibility was associative under the context, not for its architecture. I want to make that clear. And that industrial development context was from 1890 to 1955. It is considered a historical resource for the purposes of CEQA, and for those reasons, as you know, this should be before the Historic Preservation Commission, who have expertise in this field. Next slide, please.
Okay, it's up.
Thank you. So when it was found locally eligible, the status code was 5S. Its integrity and reasons for its significance are fully described in the intensive, not general, not a windshield survey, not a let's take a look and see what we can see survey. Next slide, please.
It's
so
up.
Those are the results. Thank you. Based on that survey, it's a presumptive historical resource under CEQA, the main building, not a potential, as Jay was explaining from a Glendale perspective. So next slide, please.
It's up.
The developer, thank you, engaged 2 consultants who have a habit of never finding any properties to be historically significant. I'm sorry if my overview was not congenial. It was based on facts. In 2021, ESA found this property not eligible for the local register, which seems to be an active theme. Next slide. Their reasoning had some issues. First, they stated that Glendale did not have a context statement for streamlined modern style. The issue that should be on the right is Glendale's context statement subtheme for streamlined modern style that was prepared in 2018. It's been widely available. So predicated on that, that's a problem. Next slide, please. Under Glendale's context statement subtheme for streamlined modern, it describes the character-defining features of the style, each of which is expressed in the subject property main building. They are listed in this slide, including horizontal emphasis, asymmetry, flat roof. Next photo, there should be some photos coming up. If you can let me know if you click it.
I clicked them all.
Okay, so the photos are up. Sorry,
Yes.
I can't see it. So flat roof, smooth plaster finish, curved corners, cantilevered canopy, etc. Next slide, please. Now I can see that. Thank you. So the consultant compared the subject property to other properties that were claimed to be streamlined modern in style but retained higher integrity. Funnily, the property on the left has an altered main and other entrances and a few altered bays, like the subject property, but it is otherwise an excellent local example of the very rare style in industrial building uses. The other 2 were built in 1951 Each of them has entirely altered entrances. Neither is even an example of the streamlined modern style. This means that at present there are only 2 known existing historically significant industrial streamlined modern style buildings in Glendale. The alterations, some of which were described by Mr. Platt, including the window changes, unfortunately are conjectural. After the war, it's entirely impossible that different window types could be used on different elevations. That rendering that you saw bears little resemblance to the actual building.
Ms. Smith, if you can please wrap it up, the time limit is up.
Okay, thank you. It's taking longer, as you can imagine, because of the slides. I'll go as fast as I can. The other consultant based her opinion on faulty justifications, including the addition of other buildings on the property, which has nothing to do with it, the change in use, exaggerated substantial alteration, and the outstanding issue that she has never listed a property in the local register. Next slide, please. Okay, I think it's after this. Not quite sure what you're on.
Alterations.
Thank you. So the consultant didn't really look into the issue of the alterations. If they had, they would have learned about at least 3 fires that occurred at the property in the 1950s. Their complete records didn't include those alterations. The owners were required by then current life safety codes to add a fire door, which is what that big metal door is, with a fire-rated assembly. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. The existing main entrance door met those requirements and has tempered side lights that were added in about 1975, according to the tempering bug. A few other openings were infilled in the same way, likely for code compliance. There was a requirement for 40-foot openings to be closed. So in the city's industrial development registration requirements, they are each met by the main building as described, and it's a rare example of the style. The survey described a bunch of character-defining features that I think we've already gone through. So in closing, this style is important because it's considered the first modern style architecture to achieve wide acceptance among the American public. It's also a very rare example of a disappearing style in Glendale. This building, this one building, could be easily incorporated into the proposed project and should be fully considered by the lead agency. I think you all know that I keep an eye on this stuff, and I liked when Jay said we just thought we'd prepare an EIR. I think it's a requirement in this case, so I appreciate this. I think the last slide should be up.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that was so many words in so little time. I appreciate everyone's attention to detail.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we, if we do have other callers, I'm just going to move on to,
We have one other caller.
okay, let's take the call and then we'll move on to the speaker cards.
Mr. Michael Lee, you're on the air with the Design Review Board. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Michael Lee, and I'm a senior associate with CDC. I'm part of the design team, and our focus and specialty is the exterior envelope, so the exterior walls, glazing, so forth. I just wanted to echo what John Wood-Gensler was noting about the use of EIFS, or what we call EPIS. It is a very durable product that meets current building codes much more efficiently than other products. So durable that it's recognized by FEMA, recognized by Miami-Dade, which has very high wind ratings and ratings for hurricane zones. So I just wanted to assure everyone that we've taken the time to use a product that not only appears aesthetically very nice, but also is extremely durable. Also used for reference at, you can go look at it at Disney, at Universal Studios, at a number of hospitals in the Southern California region. So it's not a product that is not used commercially on similar buildings. And I really appreciate your time, and I've really enjoyed listening to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker, Mr. Josh Christensen.
Hello, my name is Josh Christensen. I'm a representative with the Southwest Mountain States Regional Council of Carpenters, representing 90,000 workers. I'm also a resident of the Pelincone District here in Glendale. It's about 5 to 7 blocks from this project. We, the Carpenters, we want to support this project and ask that we push this project through and to allow opportunity for local hire, allow opportunity for apprentices to go to work and be able to learn their trade along the side with their journeymen. We'd like to express my support for this project and believe that it will benefit the environmental and local economy by practicing protocols that will protect workers' health and safety and incorporate adequate environmental mitigations. Again, I thank you for your time, and I'm going to give the rest of this time back and ask that you support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michael Gonzalez?
I'm the applicant's attorney.
Oh.
I'm only here to answer questions if necessary.
In case, okay, thank you. Mr. Luis Porez? Welcome.
I want to start off by thanking you for your time tonight. My name is Luis Porras. I'm the business agent for Local 761 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters out of Burbank, California here. And we believe in projects like this one. It's great for our members. They help support the community here. We live in the community. It's great for their living wages. You know, it's just a testament and truly understanding the importance of supporting our local economy and our hiring of local residents who live here. It's very important to our members, because they're always asking at the meetings, who's building that building? Why are we driving out of town to go work and come back and live in the city? So thank you so much for going this route. Really appreciate it. My members will, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Juan Rodriguez? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Juan Rodriguez. I'm with IBEW Local 40. I am part of the electricians that have been serving the motion picture industry for the past 100 years. We are celebrating 100 years, and we've always been devoted and dedicated to this industry. We're the guys that build the studios, and we're the guys that maintain them for all your electrical needs on facilities, maintenance, and production. We have a lot of members of our local that live in Glendale and that are anxiously waiting to drive down the street and work here. Also, we also have a training apprenticeship program that teaches all our apprentices and journeymen skills in the trade they need to fulfill and successfully build these studios for everybody to enjoy and, you know, feel the fruits of the labors, you know, of everything, you know, and we're in full support of this project, and I really consider you guys push this through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last, we have Mr. Johnny Escobedo. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Johnny Escobedo, and I'm here on behalf of Ironworkers Local 416 to support this project. We are excited about this project because it provides good paying jobs, hire local residents, and use responsible contractors. This project is great for our community and the city of Glendale, and we proudly support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other callers? Or
There's no other callers.
no other callers? Okay, great. Are there any questions, or we can, yes?
Yeah,
Yes.
for the applicant, if he's-
Okay,
wants to
if
do
the
a
applicant, oh, it's time for the applicant to come up and do a rebuttal if you so choose to.
Thank you, Commissioners. Michael Gonzalez, representing the applicant. I just want to point out that all voices have been voices of support tonight. There was one commenter that submitted an erroneous and factually incorrect document into the record during the environmental impact report review period. That commenter appeared again tonight, perhaps even presenting more in fact, incorrect and inaccurate information into this record. Mr. Platt did a wonderful job of describing the pathway as to why this project is here. I would defer, of course, to staff on the interpretation of their code, not to a member of the public. So with that, we would urge you to move this project forward, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Question for the architect.
Sure, if the architect wouldn't mind.
So, I mean, I understand all the discussion about historical, whether it's historical or not or whatever, and, you know, I'm sure we'll have some discussion about that. But objectively, it is a cool-looking building. It is a very nice building. You know, why was there no effort to try and incorporate that building, or at least the facade of that building, into the design? I mean, Gensler has a good reputation of trying to do, you know, adaptive reuse of existing buildings rather than just demolish them.
It's a great question. We did look at that building, but given the proximity and the need of the parking, it didn't make any sense on that corner. And by the time we adapted it, we would not have achieved the goals of this project, which was, again, to maintain the size of the stages that are needed for local productions, for both feature film and television, as well as the support space. So there wasn't room on the site to be able to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions? No? Okay. All right, with that then, I think we will close the public forum and we will move on to our deliberations. Who'd like to kick us off? Mr. Simonian or Mr. Welsh? Okay.
I'll just start off by saying, you know, I'm definitely in support of the project, of what's being done here, of the idea of creating a new great creative campus here in Glendale. I think that I could quibble about a couple little things here, but by and large, I think that, you know, the design is well executed, the use and everything is fine. I'm still a little concerned about the internal circulation. I still, you know, having visited several studio sites, I know that there's often a lot of external vehicles, star wagons, trucks, and stuff like that, and I'm just concerned internally that there's just not a lot of circulation there. And, you know, you're going to have cars go on the way to the parking structure, running into big trucks and things like that. So, but again, that's neither here nor there. My biggest concern, again, I think is the parking garage. In the last many years, I don't think we've ever approved in this city a project where the parking garage has been prominently located on a very visible corner, so prominent in the facade. And especially to have lost a, you know, what is, again, I think objectively a cute little building, you know, which arguably is not a historic resource, but it's still a nice little building. That's, you know, and replacing it with a parking garage just strikes me as wrong. And I think that I would prefer that we see some change in that, where the parking garage wasn't such a prominent feature, where if possible, if at all possible, that building could be incorporated into it. I know that they talked about using flex space and, you know, they had a commissary and stuff like that. I think that there could be very good reuse of that building if it were properly incorporated in. Even if the parking garage was sort of built behind it, anything that we could do that would just mitigate this big, huge 6-story parking structure on a very prominent corner in San Fernando Road. So that would be my main objective, to either place a condition on that or return for redesign with an objective to try to look at an alternative location or an alternative to that big honkin' parking structure. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Welsh. Mr. Koskanian?
Thank you. Overall, thank you everyone that came up and presented. I think you all did a really great job with this site. I'm excited to see this come into our city. It's definitely, and we had the good supports of all the unions that came out today, so thank you all to all the unions as well. But overall, I'm in support of this project. I'm excited to see it come to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koskanian. Mr. Simonian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to also thank everyone for taking the time to come out, all the union leaders, all the community members, and design team, and also the legal team and the consultant team, etc. Overall, this is a large project, right? We're talking about 10 acres on a portion of our city on San Fernando that doesn't get redevelopment all that often, and when it does, it's usually smaller parcels. Usually uses have been there for a very long time. And more, I think, restrictive is the environmental factors, right? Is this area has been very environmentally dirty for many, many, many decades. And so it is very cost prohibitive to build new, as been described. When I heard about this project and when I heard that it was all the same developer that had brought a project forward to us some months ago on Glendale, I was pleased about that because I thought that was a really neat design. And I'm really glad that it's being built the way that it was presented. It really was a very modern, very sleek design. And so I'm proud of that building kind of going where it is in our city. When I look at this project, I also see progress. I mean, this is a great opportunity to bring a very large facility into our city that is going to benefit not just the folks building it, but the overall industry, the overall job market, the overall placement of Glendale as remaining one of the most important cities in LA County. City of Glendale has always been extremely important because of its proximity to studios, and it's projects like this that I think help define that on a long-term basis. And so overall, as far as the use is concerned, as far as the idea, as far as the concept, as far as what is being proposed to this site for our city, I'm in support of. As far as, site planning is concerned, et cetera, I think it's done a fairly good job. I do agree there's always little things here and there to talk about. But in general, I thought the project that was presented to us is very well thought out in regards to site access, in regards to its context, in regards to its program. The abundance of setbacks on the east side of 48 feet, 62 feet on the south side, 17 feet along San Fernando. The ability to break up the mass of the building is I think, very positive. The ride share, every time a large project comes front of this board, I'm always the one saying, well, how's service work? How do the delivery trucks come in? How do the Ubers operate? And I've said that about every large project. And finally, there's a project that has addressed it. So thank you for doing that. The multiple auto entries and exits, and as was outlined in the architectural guidelines or the architectural summary, I thought was very helpful for me to understand that. Could they be a little wider? Could those service the larger trucks better? I mean, there's always room for, I guess, improvement, but I will leave that up to them to figure out. It's internal. The building variety, as indicated on building number 1, I think is very well thought out. I don't have an issue with the EFS per se. And I think as far as building number 1 is concerned, which is the predominant feature, it's got some really good attributes. I mean, there's a building base to it, which is very positive, right? There's amazing undulation as far as the design is concerned. That's very positive. There's an emphasis of the window frames. There's an emphasis of the horizontality of the building. All those are very positive elements. The middle gap that breaks up the mass of the building along San Fernando is a very big building. Again, good. All these are design guideline features that have been incorporated. The end caps of the building, if you look at some of the renderings, there's like an end cap on the south side, and then there's another end cap to building number 1 on kind of the northwest side, just adjacent to the parking structure. Again, very good. It's a very sophisticated design. I guess I'm totally in support of it. I think it's amazingly sophisticated and well thought out. the only thought that just comes to my mind is incorporate more color into this. I could just tell by your presentation and your style, there's probably a very neat order to design aesthetics that you follow, which I totally understand and appreciate. I think there is something neat about the 21st century and some of these uses that are popping up in Hollywood, like the Netflix building, et cetera. That is an opportunity to do something special. And because you have all the elements, when you look at all the sophisticated aspects of the building, all those items are in there, which are very expensive to build. They're there, but they're all kind of subdued with similar colors, and so they don't step out as much, in my opinion. And so, for example, the parking structure, has the metal aluminum screen to it. Wonderful feature, right? And that could be celebrated with just a little more color, maybe. The building itself, Building A, has a trellis incorporated on the north side. Why not add some color to it, some variety to it, make it pop? The middle gap portion, very well thought out, great. I mean, the windows are a little different, but you could maybe get some more decorative cladding in there with a little more color that you already have the cladding, a little more color. So I think I wouldn't, let's say, go in so far as change the material, it's all there. I would just say, yes, I do agree with staff in that provide a little more variety in color, not so much materials, because you all have everything. So I think all the materials are spot on, everything is there. And I think this could be achieved with just a little more pushing the envelope with color, I guess. That would be my only comment to a good project. Overall, I support it. I think it's well thought out. I think it's going to do wonders for our city. And I would be in support of, changing the condition, not so much to say utilize a higher quality materials. No, I'm okay with the EFS. Not so much to say provide a variety of materials, because it already exists, as I pointed out. But maybe keep that last portion, which is emphasize the colors a bit more of the materials that are there. And so those would be my comments, Madam Chair, and of course I could, I'm open for any kind of dialogue that comes out of this. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Simonian. So that leaves me, and I too am, in support of this project. I think it's beautifully designed, and it's going to be a wonderful addition to our city. I will say, I've had the past where I've worked on a lot of historic projects myself, so when this came across to us and I looked at the building that exists there, and of course there was the question of the historic significance of it, I think on the face of it, I saw it and I thought, oh, that is a cool, older, modern building. But I appreciate all of the presentations that were given where you fully, explained to us, and I appreciate that there was not just one consultant, but multiple consultants looking into it. And once you dig into it further, as Mr. Platt, stated, if it's altered well beyond what it originally once was, we can't consider that a historic resource at that point. And because of that nature, and that fact, I can't bring myself to say that that building has to remain and we have to incorporate it into this design, because I don't see how it could work with the program and the amount of development that's going on to the site and that's already been designed here in front of us. So the environmental aspect of it, where you guys couldn't go underground because of I forgot what it is even, but yeah, vapor intrusion mitigation, so I would have imagined that there would have been some underground parking otherwise incorporated, which would have been nicer. But what I do love about the fact that what we are seeing on the main part of the road is still very nice and very cool buildings. Like it's not just a typical parking garage, it's clad, and as Mr. Simonian pointed out, maybe the little bit of splash of color is all it might need. And I too am not against EFS. I think it's a high durable material, and I don't have an issue with that at all. I appreciate the amount of landscape, the amount of undulation and breaking up of the mass and going in and out along that main thoroughfare and sort of tucking in the studios. And I think it's going to be a great add to our city, so I am in favor of the project and in support of it. Nicely done. With that, I guess, do we have a motion or?
May I just have a clarification for the
Yes, of
condition?
course.
So the staff condition is addressing only building 1. So what I understood, board wants to see the variation in colors in all buildings here, 1 through 4.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Only building 1, which is the main office building facing Sanford.
Correct. I feel as though building number 1 has the undulation, it has the different materials, it has already all the aspects of good design that we ask for. And so I'll kind of start off maybe on the northwest side and come down. The parking structure has the metal clad screening, which is very nice, and it actually has like a Z pattern to it. I think that metal panel could actually start being a color of its own. You know, it could also be backlighted, let's say, as a thought process, right? To create that kind of excitement of the corner. In regards to the end caps of building number 1, there's that one, lower height piece on the south side, and then also the bolt-on piece on the north side. That easily could just have different colors of the horizontal band.
Okay.
The material could change just slightly. And in addition to the metal trellis already being proposed on the northwest side, will add quite a bit of variety already as an end cap. In regards to the middle, it's already well thought out. It has the glazing as different colors, so no need to change that. But the metal decorative cladding could certainly become something a little different than black, that you have at the base. Is it a deal killer? But no, I could tell you're not very happy about that, but something to celebrate it. But in general, we have such a large facade of just whiteness, right? And so all you got to do is just change that a bit, and I think it will really come to life. So how do we put that in a condition? I would say, add a variety of color to the existing materials as proposed to create interest and variety in the design. And I'm speaking for the record, and so I'm sure the architects and staff could go back into it, and I'm sure the other board members might have some thoughts as well on that.
Thank you.
Any thoughts?
Okay with it?
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Welsh?
But no, I still can't get over the parking structure, so.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Do we have
Is
a
that
motion?
clarified for you? Do we
Yeah,
have a motion?
it was.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
Motion to
clarification.
approve?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Board Member Kaskanian,
Yes.
Board Member Welch,
No.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
and Chair Chagayan.
Yes.
Thank you. Would you like to take a recess?
Yes.
For a few minutes?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
And for the record, Madam Chair, I'll be
Oh, and-
recusing myself for the
yes.
rest of the evening.
Mr. Simonian will be leaving. Thank you for the reminder. Yes.
Okay, we are back from recess. We are going to reopen item 7A for new business. We do need to have a motion to adopt the resolution certifying the final EIR. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to certify the EIR.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay. This is a motion to adopt the final resolution for DRB case number 001980-2023 for the project site at 5426 San Fernando Road. Roll call vote, Board Member Kaskanian,
Yes.
Board Member Welch,
No.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
and Chair Chagayan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we are done with that item.
Madam Chair, I'll be recusing myself for the evening.
You are
Thank
excused. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, if we're ready to move on to the next item, we have Chloe Kuffel. She'll be presenting the project for 1230 Bruce Avenue.
Good evening, board members. My name is Chloe Kuffel, and I'm here to present case number PDR 001808 2023 at 1230 Bruce Avenue. The project is a proposal for a 651 square foot second story addition to an existing 1,252 square foot single story home. It also includes a courtyard at the front, a new 2-car detached garage at the rear, and a pool. It's located in the Grandview neighborhood in West Glendale, and the neighborhood primarily consists of 1- and 2-story single-family dwellings with an eclectic mix of architectural styles.
Sorry, Ms. Kuffel, is there a presentation?
Oh, is it not up?
No.
Of course not. There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. It's located in the R1 zone and is in floor area ratio District 2. Here you can see the existing 2-story homes in the neighborhood, including the home directly next to 1230 Bruce, just giving you a sense for other 2-story houses in the neighborhood. This is photos of the existing property. It's Spanish colonial revival featuring smooth stucco and terracotta tile roof. It's modest in size, 1,252 square feet and single story. The proposal is for a 651 square foot second story addition to provide an additional bedroom and bathroom. The proposal will also provide a courtyard at the front of the property, a new code compliant garage at the rear, and a pool. The house was built in 1939. Staff conducted a historic evaluation report and found that it was not eligible for historic listing, and the project is exempt from CEQA. Here you can see the site planning. The second story addition is on top at the rear there. The courtyard is outside of the front yard setbacks, and you can see here that the addition is set back pretty far from the front as well. Here's a floor plan on the right. You can see the existing first story floor plan, and then the second story is on the left there. It's just a new bedroom and a laundry room and bathroom. Here you can see all 4 elevations. The proposed courtyard provides architecturally appropriate materials and elements that complement the existing style of the building, including the use of iron gates that are at the front and the rear. The addition itself is significantly pushed back from the street. The gable and roof lines match the existing condition to create a really nice, harmonious project. The center window cutout at the second story will be tiled, so it's set back really well so that the massing is not obtrusive at all. The applicant has proposed vinyl windows that are recessed, and some of them are gridded. We included a recommendation to replace these with Fibrex or wood-clad windows, but I do want to mention that many of the existing windows on the house were already replaced but not permitted, so that condition would include replacing all of those windows. So I just want to mention that. Here are the renderings where you can also see the backyard with the pool and the balcony there. Here are the material specs provided. They're going to use smooth stucco to match the existing conditions. They also will use hand-painted ceramic tiles, wood for the driveway gate, traditional Spanish tile for the roof, and terracotta tile floors, and the fountain will be stone. The window material, as I mentioned, is vinyl. We're recommending approval with a couple of conditions. One, to revise the window materials to wood or Fibrex to more closely match the window replacement guidelines. For the applicant to identify lighting and equipment and drainage on the plans for our approval, and then to also provide a cut sheet of the proposed front door for planning approval. I received no public letters in relation to this project, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Kuffel? No? Okay, no questions. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up, Ben Martins.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, so I'm here representing
I'm the designer of the house, representing the family.
I'm sorry, could you just state your name for the record, please?
Sure.
Thank
Ben
you.
Mertens, designer. So I'm here representing the family, Bill and Alexandra. They're a growing family. They got one kid. They got another kid on the way. I think part of what makes Glendale, specifically these R1 zones, a great place to live, are these design restrictions, right? To keep the scale correct, to keep the character of the neighborhood intact. But we also, families grow, needs change, that kind of thing. And so on this scheme, we're working on growing the residents to kind of grow along with the family. Just to be super clear, the FAR, the setbacks, and the building character are all carefully considered to respect the development requirements. And the addition, the second-story addition, is set back as far as possible from the street to prevent a formidable presence on the street. I was looking through the Glendale single-family residence development design guidelines. If you guys ever find yourself in line at Starbucks or sitting on the toilet and you happen to be browsing through that, there's a picture that looks exactly like our house. I'll show you if you want to see it.
We are familiar. Thank you, thank you.
It's the same thing. So anyway, we'll keep it super brief. The reason I came up is I just wanted to quickly address the conditions. Many of the existing windows are vinyl, and so I just wanted to advocate on the behalf of the owner. It would become, like a cost situation for them to have to redo all the windows. So part of the detailing is such that the vinyl windows are cased. They're not retrofit windows, so they don't have flanges. So the stucco will return in a consistent fashion with the rest of the building. The front door does not face the street and is an existing door to remain. And the HVAC is located on the plan currently. If we could pull up the plan real quick.
Yeah, it should be the PDF.
Site plan, yeah. So the HVAC system's currently located on the bottom of the plan there.
Okay.
So we just believe we're in conformance. We'd like to get past the additional requirements.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Do we have any questions?
Question?
Yes.
So on this condition number 1 about the window materials, are all the new windows going to comply with this?
Yes. Sorry, are all the new windows going to be vinyl?
No, are they going to be either wood or this Fibrex?
I don't know. I guess that would be something we need to work out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think vinyl windows for new windows would meet the standards. So we could make it only applicable to new windows, not existing windows.
That would be ideal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, I wanted to ask you about the big, most prominent feature of this, which is this niche you have on the second floor facade. First question is, why didn't you just put a window there? Second would be, what specifically are you thinking in terms of the tile that is going to be within that?
So Chloe, if we could pull up the floor plan, second floor plan. This niche is sort of driven by the layout of the room. And so the clients did not want to face towards the street. That's their master bedroom. They wanted their doors to open out to the back. And so the bed is up against that wall that faces the street.
Yep, you could still have the window above the bed,
Have a window above, you're right. There's also kind of a condition where, they didn't want to have sunlight on that side of, we'd done a scheme with clerestories, that kind of thing. So
okay.
The arch there is to sort of simulate a window, to have variation in the facade, so we don't have just a big blank facade, but to comply with the request to not have a window.
And the tile?
And the tile is just kind of an accent.
But I saw like 4 different tiles on that little material board that they put up there. So
We still have yet to select them.
okay.
Yeah, is that something that we need to, we would need
It
to
would be
select?
normally something we would expect to see some kind of a rendering about that, or at least an idea of what you're planning, rather than just right now, on everything that I saw, it was like a beige.
Yeah.
And I'm all like, okay, beige doesn't work,
Over the material board, we've got a couple.
Yeah, I'm seeing the material board for the
Yeah.
first time tonight. It wasn't in my packet, so.
Gotcha. Yeah, the supplier is called Nonato Ceramics. They're like a, historical custom painted supplier. And so we haven't made an exact selection or designed a pattern, but the request
But it'll be
was-
very elaborate and decorative rather than just like a plain blue or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're going for kind of like an old Spanish style, Spanish glam kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. All right, those are my questions.
Thank you. No further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martins. No, do we have any callers? We have no other speaker cards? No? Okay. Looks like we can go ahead and close the public forum and move on to deliberations. Mr. Kaskanian?
Yep. So overall, I think you did a really good job with the design. I think it's going to fit pretty well in the community. I actually did have a question. Can you just clarify? They said they didn't want the windows on the second floor, you said? Yeah. Okay, they didn't want the windows on the second floor. Yeah, I think it would be good for us to just make sure that we have some sort of tiles there. But other than that, I'm in support of the project.
Thank you. Mr. Welsh?
Okay, I mean, blending into a 1930s Spanish is tough, you know, because a lot of times modern building conditions don't really lend themselves to doing that. I think you've done a pretty good job here trying to do that. I appreciate that it's all pushed quite far back. I was debating whether I liked the gable end facing the street, but I decided that, you know, it works because it complements the front, you know, the shape of that niche that you've done there really, you know, is a scaled down version of the front window. So I think it works. I mean, I personally would have done a window, but, you know, I understand, you know, personal requirements. And I think that's doing it in this kind of a niche, you know, it makes sense. You know, it works with the style. Definitely be careful with the tile selection. You know, you don't want something that looks out of character to the house. So, and similarly with the roof tiles, you know, you're adding a new roof second floor, and there's not, when I visited the house, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of patina on the tiles, the existing tiles, but some. So, you know, do what you can to make sure they blend, because otherwise they'll really stand apart. But generally speaking, I think you've done a good job. I think it's a modest scale. I think it's very responsive and respectful of the neighborhood. So I'm in support of it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. I concur with my fellow board members. I think it's nicely done. I think the rendering kind of threw me off where the porte-cochere arch was a lot lower than the two other arches, but seeing the house itself is not truly like that. I think it's just a mistake with the rendering, but I personally like it without the awning myself, but I'm guessing we're not touching the first floor. But for the addition, it's well, you know, integrated. I had a similar feeling about the niche, but I don't know if maybe breaking it up into two smaller niches maybe helps it at all. But I guess once you introduce that, it's going to be a nice balance, or a fine balance of when you pick the tile finally, just to make sure it's not either too loud or, you know, make sure there's that fine balance there. But I appreciate that all the materials and the addition are cohesive with the existing house and the vocabulary of the design. So I am in support of the project and agree with the conditions.
The only thing I'll suggest is that on condition one, we make it, the windows would only be new windows,
New
not
windows.
existing windows. So I don't think that we should impose a requirement on that, just on the new. And I think leaving 2 and 3 are fine. You know, it's not going to really cost you anything
Impact,
to
yeah.
make sure that. But I think that, although number 3, he says it's an existing front door. Do we?
Oh, it says proposed front door, but.
Yeah.
We can cut that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
If it's existing and off to the side.
So cut number 3, Number 2 is okay for staff to double check on the stuff, but
Yeah.
I think number 1, to make it just the new windows.
Do we
And
have a
with that, I'll move it.
Okay,
Approval with conditions.
and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote. Board Member Kaskanian?
Yes.
Board Member Welch?
Yes.
And Chair Chagayan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night. Good night. Have you filled out, are you planning to speak?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next project. It is item C and D on the agenda for 4208 New York Avenue. The case planner is Dennis Joe, and he will be presenting.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. As mentioned by Ms. Zadi here, the last two items will be presented together as they're both projects will be on the same site address as 4208 New York Avenue. For a quick summary, the first case, which is case number PDR 002026-2023, which is outlined in yellow, is to construct a new one-story, approximately 2,200 square foot single-family residence with an attached two-car garage on an approximately 6,600 square foot lot, which I will be referring to as Lot A in lieu of the long case number, okay? Second, and for the second, just reading to the record, PDR -002027-2023, which I'll be referring to as Lot B, is to construct a new one-story, approximately 1,800 square foot single-family residence with an attached two-car garage, which also includes an attached 784 square foot ADU. The project site consists of two APNs, as mentioned before, which are tied via an existing single-family dwelling that straddles across the property line. As shown in the slide, the site is bounded by the 210 freeway to the south and residences to the west, north, and east. On the slide here is of the existing house that was constructed circa 1924, which will be demoed as part of the project. A historic resources evaluation was prepared by Saphos, which found that the primary facade had been compromised where the front porch had been enclosed. A sliding glass door had been added to serve as the primary entrance. And in summary, the historic resource evaluation concluded that the overall character of the building does not retain integrity, design, and feeling. And as shown on the right side of this photo here, there was a mature oak tree, which had been removed with the knowledge of the urban forester. As conditioned from the urban forester during the lot line adjustment, a replacement tree is to be provided in the street right-of-way, not necessarily on the property, for each new dwelling for a total of 2. So as we're talking about two projects here, the urban forester, for the loss of that one tree, they're asking for a total of 2 street trees.
Is that the tree in this picture?
Yes, this photo is from, which I'm going to go into the next few slides. In the past, they had about earlier this year in 2023 January, there was a lot line adjustment, which I'm going to go into a little bit of detail there. So yes, it was there. It was removed with the knowledge of the urban forester. So
It was there last weekend. It looks like it's still there.
is it really still there?
It looked like it to
Okay,
me, but.
okay. Neighborhood Context is developed with the majority of single-family, one-story homes. They were developed in the 1940s, mostly in the minimal traditional style. And to the south of it, as you see in the photos, is the 210 freeway. And as I was speaking to the permit history, this slide demonstrates the parcel configuration of the site, which has 2 slender, elongated parcels. So there's technically 2 properties here. And during January of this year, the director approved a lot line adjustment to adjust the property lines between the 2 parcels, which A, shown in yellow, is approximately 6,600 square feet, which will be in the front. And then Lot B, shown in green, is approximately 9,000 square feet, a shade under 9,000, with a flag lot configuration. And just jumping into brief analysis. Overall, both projects are appropriately sited as shown in yellow. Lot A is configured with code-compliant setbacks centrally sited on the parcel. It's set back 25 feet from New York Avenue, which is complementary to the neighborhood pattern, and it consists of 6-foot interior setbacks at the sides and rear. And then moving on to Lot B, which is the flag lot, consists of an extensive setback at approximately 106 feet, linear feet, and is configured with compliant interior setbacks. And as mentioned before, there is an ADU on this property being attached. While the minimum interior setbacks for single-family homes is 6 feet, the ADU is going to be attached will be set back 4.5 feet from the eastern interior property line. As you can see from the, it's closer to the eastern interior property line. The state code requires 4. They're going to provide 4.5 feet. And as a brief note, while ADU is included with the project, the ADU is not reviewable by the board. And the focus tonight should be on the primary dwellings. The only single condition that staff has regarding site planning is if a design of a perimeter fence, which is not showing, and if they were to, staff is just recommending that decorative materials such as wood or wrought iron, stone, or split-face block with blocks finished with stucco be provided, and the use of vinyl or other plastic materials should be avoided. Briefly going over the elevations, this would be Lot A, which would be the front. It will be a one-story configuration, 19 feet in height. The massing is in concept and will be a proper fit with a neighborhood, once again consisting of majority of one-story single-family homes. And similarly, Lot B, which would be the rear lot, and the flag lot configuration, this will have a approximately 18-foot tall height. The massing of the project is appropriate as the building will be extensively set back about 106 feet and will be partially concealed by the front house. Overall, both project roof forms are consistent with its project's desired design, which is to fit in with the context, which I've identified as mostly with minimal traditional style homes. As you can see here, it will have pitched gables and appropriate treatment. Moving on, design and detailing. For both buildings, they both will consist of composite horizontal sidings throughout all elevations. The front entrances will be accented with a composite board material shown in the light brown sand-colored material you may see on the slide here. The windows for both projects are going to be with flush nail-on windows, constructed of vinyl with a horizontal slider operation. Staff is recommending that the windows be recessed placement with window sills and window surrounds to complement the minimal traditional style. And because the front entries for both dwellings are without any detail, the front door design, staff just recommends that prior to plan check submittal, the design shall be provided with staff just to verify that it does match, and once again, the minimal traditional style of the home. Overall, the design and detailing are appropriate for the style. Overall, encompassing with the analysis of the previous slides, staff does recommend approval of the project with the following conditions, and I will just briefly go over them. The first one is just prior to plan check that it's for staff's review of the door design. The second one, at the windows, it should be with a recessed treatment or recessed placement with treatment, wooden sills, and surrounds to complement the minimal traditional style. And then 3 is the comment about if a perimeter fence between the properties or the surrounding properties were to be provided, it'd be of a quality material and avoid uses of vinyl or some type of plasticky material. And then 4 is just an echoing of Urban Forester's comment that they are going to be conditioning for the loss of the tree to provide 2 on the street right of way. This does conclude staff's presentation for both the projects, and just the board may comment on both projects and condition both projects as they both see fit. And 2 separate roll calls will be provided at the end. So for the sake of time savings, I provided 1 presentation. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Joe. That was helpful. Yes, questions?
No public comments or letters?
Staff has not received any.
The plans are quite full, covering the lots. It meets the zoning requirements for lot coverage?
It does meet for the requirements for lot coverage, FAR, and so forth, yeah.
Because it's like 45% usually, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One other
Yes.
thing. Rather than having two curb cuts, was it at all considered to do like an easement, to have just a single curb cut, and then have the first Lot A driveway access the garage from that existing one, or the proposed one?
No consideration was for that. I don't think staff pushed for it. But if the board, would like to discuss amongst themselves.
Has the lot line adjustment already been done?
The letter by the director has been approved. Because of this demolition policy we have here, we need an approved project before they can start doing the whole lot line adjustment for the recordation and moving all that processes. That's kind of the where we're at right now.
But is it something we could even make a condition of to force an easement on this?
I don't believe you can lot line adjustments, they're ministerial,
Yeah,
so I don't
Okay.
believe that we could do that.
okay. Okay. I just think it would be saving efficiency, and less hardscape and fewer curb cuts, but, I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, I guess. Do you know, since I don't, if the architect is here, but like what the rhyme or reason is for the switching of material, like between the teak and the?
I think from their architectural letter or their write-up, it was supposed to be more of a modern flair. And, I can kind of see that maybe some questions may arise for the abutting of the materials. But some of these accents do come at the front entry and some of them at the ADU, which, and you may ask, well, what happens on the ADU? How do staff look at that? Well, the ADU, while not reviewable by the board, it just has to match the primary dwelling, which you're reviewing tonight. So we cannot say what the design is on the ADU or comment on it, but you are reviewing the primary dwelling. I mean, that's the only way I can see how the code reads.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any further questions? No? And we have no speakers? We don't have any callers? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Then we will close the public forum and open deliberations. Mr. Welsh.
Okay. I mean, generally, I support the project. I think it's, a fairly modest design. We're not talking about 2 stories, although frankly, I would have been okay with 2 stories in the site, with a more condensed footprint and more open space. But, that's obviously the discretion of the applicant. I like the design. I like the use of the materials. I thought it was fine. I think that they accomplished quite a program, a good use of a very underutilized piece of property right now. So,
Thank you. And Mr. Koskanian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with our fellow board member. I'm in support of this project. I think you all did a great job with the design and definitely going to have a big improvement from where it's at right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur as well. I'm in support of the project. I agree that a lot is packed into a little bit of space, but it's nicely done. It's cohesive. They speak to each other, and it's not an eyesore, which is what we don't want to see. So, and I approve with the conditions as stated. So, we want to make a motion.
Motion to approve with the conditions set by staff.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to do the roll call for PDR 0022026-2023. And this will be roll call. Board Member Kaskanian?
Yes.
Board Member Welsh?
Yes.
And Madam Chair, Chaskanian.
Chagayan.
Chagayan,
It's
yes, yes.
okay. It's bound to
Chagayan.
happen. Yes.
Okay, so this will be the second roll call for the second project, which is the case number PDR 0022027-2023. And do we have a motion on this?
Motion to approve with the conditions.
And then we have a second, obviously, by Board Member Welsh. This will be roll call. Board Member Kaskanian,
Yes.
Board Member Welsh, and Madam Chair Chagayan.
Yes. Yes.
Motions stand for both projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank
luck.
you. Good luck.
You
You
too.
too.
So who the hell am I to expect the same?